All right, I have top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and get started to not waste anyone's time here or anyone online watching on the B-Sides YouTube. So hey everybody, good afternoon. Thank you so much for attending this talk today here. We're going to be going over from law enforcement to cybersecurity, building skills that matter. So for all my gamers in the room or online, we've all played Skyrim. You can't get past this part. Who are you? We need to introduce myself so you guys kind of know who you're looking at and listening to today. Now, I'm not going to read this. This is a quick little bio snip chat of my LinkedIn that you can quickly navigate to and kind of find out and figure out who am I, my background, what I've been into. I think the real important thing that you guys need to know about me is kind of who is Andrew Crotty behind the cyber piece of this. And I'm a D&D nerd. I like Critical Role. I'm a father. I'm a Scuba Steve, World of Warcraft for the Horde. I like to go to the gym. I was obviously previous law enforcement, obviously from my chat, if that wasn't a hint. I love food. Who doesn't like noodles? That was a Naruto reference of how I was trying to eat the noodles for those that watch Naruto. If you don't know what I'm talking about, disregard. I like to travel, and I get to travel, thankfully, thanks to the military and just on my own time. That was a picture where I was in Germany. Every year, and I joke about this, I like to get my yearly photo with John Hammond, my ginger lookalike, or vice versa. I like food. We are a Disney household. My wife has never been to Disney until we got married. Now we go every year. I did it to myself. I obviously have my handle, and I also go by Ginger Ninja, being a redhead. Also with the last name of Karate. It just came naturally, and that's what I would have been called. Being in Arizona, there's some lovely hiking places the wife and I like to go to. That's a picture of the Wave Cave. If you're ever in Arizona, just a little east of Mesa, it's an amazing hike. It only takes about an hour, but it's really great. I am a SOC analyst, so with the "this is fine" meme, that is my life day to day, dealing with SOC detections and living in that. And I'm currently still in the military as a warrant officer. So we're going to talk today, obviously, with my transition breaking into cyber, but also just to talk about getting into cybersecurity. So coming from law enforcement, I saw that there was a lot of similarities of SOC analysts and beat cops. So taking calls for service were kind of similar to picking up SOAR cases to an investigation. Doing case investigation was very similar to working a case and figuring out why this alert fired. Writing police reports to send up to our higher-ups so that they could kind of see what's going on within your city was very much the same of having to create reports and then sending those up to audit or to your teams to kind of figure out what's happening within your environment. But a lot of folks ask the same question: what do I need to do? Where do I need to learn? How do I start? And any of us and all of us have been through applications, especially right now, we know that feeling when we're the one picked out of 10,000 people when a job goes open for about an hour and there's already 5,000 applicants. So what's the first thing we do when we want to transition or break into a new career? We go to Google. So we type in what any good analyst or coworker would do when navigating and doing case investigations. We ask Google, hey, how can I get into cybersecurity? And with that, we're going to start pivoting and looking for the right role that fits us. Some of you would like to be SAC developers, maybe DevSec engineers, purple teamers, DLP compliance, sales. There's so many. How do I want to become the next John Hammond, network Chuck? Things that kind of help you kind of pivot to the right direction of where you want to go. So the next thing we then look at is career maps. Everyone likes a map. Everyone likes a way that's going to direct us and maybe kind of hold our hands of, hey, what's the best route that's going to take me from point A to point B? Now, obviously, there's several different roles here if you look at the very bottom of this little list. And this was honestly a simple snippet off the web, a quick Google chat looking for career maps. And this has to be the map, right? This is what we need to be successful. This is going to take us from point A, IT assurance GRC analyst, all the way up to CISO. But wait a minute, Andy, that can't be it, right? Because I've been on Google, and when I type in career maps, this is the map I find. And the map from here we can see is from Hack the Box. Now, Hack the Box recommends a kind of different path than what we just saw with titles and kind of lateral moving up in vertical positions, right? Maybe starting with Try Hack Me, going through some walkthroughs, understanding some blue team, red team methodologies, cracking a box, getting root, and then moving maybe to Immersive Labs, then going into Hack the Box, then VulnHub, and so on and so forth as we start to pivot around this kind of windy trail, which I had to laugh at. And anyone here that's a red teamer or anything, how it ended at CEH, it kind of made me chuckle because I don't think CEH is the new ending point here of where you're going to end your red teaming journeys getting into cybersecurity. But Andy, hold on. I went to Google, and this isn't the map we need to go to. This is the map we need to use. And obviously, this one is from coders.learning. And this map has a completely different path we need to learn. Well, Andy, this is telling me that intro to cybersecurity is my basic fundamentals of understanding malware, phishing, password attacks, operating systems, networking. And it's more of a left to right, up to down model that's then going to get us to become a cybersecurity architect. Well, hold on, Andy. There's more maps, aren't there? That's right. There's more maps. Anyone here in this room, if I were to ask you how you got into cybersecurity, would probably share a different story. And by going to Google and trying to find the best map for you may not be the same path that I took transitioning from law enforcement to cyber or whatever role you sit into. This can be the same thing for my students graduating or coming up on graduation here that are juniors and seniors that are breaking into cyber, mastering their degree, working on projects, getting certifications, which we're going to continue to talk on here briefly. Now, Andy, what's the point of these maps? Well, the point of these maps is that you get to choose your own journey. Everyone in this room, as I mentioned, has a different way that they learned, how they understood a concept, or how they may be trained or mentored or asked a mentee to kind of break down how they were successful. As many folks know within this industry, we find role models and other folks within our industry or folks that are doing the things that are being successful that we can kind of try to mimic or fall behind and say, hey, well, if it worked for them, like maybe if I followed on that same path, it might work for me. But as always, that's not always the case that happens. Some people choose to go through education via through school. They want more structure. They want something that's a 9 to 5. They want assignments. They want something that, hey, if I don't do this, there might be a punishment such as a bad grade or not graduating. You also have the right path, which is the scary wooded path that maybe that's self-taught. You're going to go on YouTube Academy, LinkedIn, a lot of open source tools and just self-teach yourself, which is not a bad path, but it's just a different way of how someone learns and breaks into this field. Now, diversity and roles in cybersecurity, and I've made some slight adjustments to these slides because when I initially tried this out with my DC 4.0 group locally, because I'm from Arizona, having all 6 slides on there was kind of difficult because they thought it was all just kind of a square for a square. The way this is kind of divided up is we're looking at 6 different roles here in the next 3 slides. So one thing that I always explain to people is when folks talk to you, if you're currently in cybersecurity or they're young folks trying to break into cybersecurity, there are 3 roles that people want to become: pen tester hackers, blue team SOC defenders, or maybe IT help desk. But what these roles I'm trying to explain to folks is there's so many more opportunities and ways to break into this field. You have things such as becoming a GRC analyst, understanding compliance, audits, telling your company what's at risk and then how to secure it. You have things such as being a cybersecurity awareness trainer, setting up phishing campaigns for your organization, making sure that folks are not falling for that friendly new LinkedIn request that you maybe got at a conference you just went to, but maybe it was from a malicious actor. You then have another important piece, which is your project managers. So maybe if you're working on specific agile projects or other things along the road that need a little bit of hand-holding to make sure that deadlines are getting met and the company's making sure that they're getting every dollar for their minute, or if you're an MSSP, you need to have those kind of check-ins to make sure there's a planning method of how things are being communicated to your team. You also have privacy and legal, which I'd say has really came around in the last 5 to 10 years for ransomware insurance, legal aspects of what's needing to be protected. I'd also say it slightly falls under the GRC aspect of what data needs to be protected during organizations on breaches and other communications that come across with those specific skills. And with other things of, hey, are we allowed to post this data? Are we allowed to collect this data? Asking your legal team to do that hard legal aspect of work of looking up case laws and other previous events that have happened is another great way of how some people can break into cyber without even knowing it. And of course, the 2, I'd say, most prized possessions of what folks want to do in cybersecurity, or some, and they want to do that cybersecurity analyst role, which are your defenders that are looking up detections, working up cases, and ensuring that your environment is staying safe, or your pen testers who are ethically breaking into your environment and trying to make it unsafe and then resafe by making up those reports on, hey, we were able to bypass this certain rule or this large language model, and we need to refine this to make sure it's actually safe and secure. All right, everybody, I'm gonna need a little bit of help on this one. Can someone in the audience, either by shouting out loud or show of hands, explain to me how they could solve the maze to my left, your right?
Well, I'm just kind of taking like a broad approach and noticing like certain pathways that are just very clearly dead ends I don't want to go down. And as I work my way through, I think that you're coming in from that left, you go, I guess, looking at it from a top down, you go up, and you take your first stride
Okay.
You go left, then you go left again once you hit that wall.
I'll save you some time. So you're analytically going step by step and going to go from point A to point B through the maze, correct? Okay, that's awesome. Is there anyone else in the room that can tell me another way to solve it? Excellent. I see another hand. I see that one. What about you, sir? Excellent. Okay.
I was kind of doing a mixture of the first two, where for me, I kind of split it up into quadrants. And I said, okay, taking this big picture and this smaller picture, I'm going to start from the end and go into my different quadrants and see where it is that I want to be. If I have a clear path from this quadrant to the next quadrant, I know where it is I want to be and where I want to start from and work my way through.
All right. I see one more hand. Go ahead. Awesome. So real quick with that excellent group exercise, thank you for everyone for the participation. See how everyone had a different methodology or analytical thinking to solve the problem I put in front of everybody. So when it comes into, I'd say, skills that matter most, we didn't have to be technical. We didn't have to open up a control prompt. We didn't have to write out a detailed SOP. We simply had to have had a good, strong conversation and then explain the different ways that we can solve a problem. So this ties into, I think, soft skills and being able to communicate and storytell, which when you're trying to break into cyber, you're trying to be the best candidate to help solve a problem or solution that an organization is trying to fill for. So the point of that exercise was just exactly that, to show that there's several different ways sometimes to solve a problem. And when you guys get into these roles, or if you're already currently into that role, just to always remember, kind of keep that same mentality, because not everyone's going to look at something the same way. And by doing so, we're able to solve these problems by using different mindsets. Now, as I mentioned, but Andy, what if I'm not technical enough? What if I don't know how to code? What if I don't know C++? What if I don't know Python? These skills that you're going to be learning through either self-education or through a education foundation through college, these things can be trained and these things can also be learned on the job. I'll tell you with full transparency, when I first got my job leaving law enforcement into my first role at the state of Arizona, I did not know how to code. I did not know Python. I did not know C++. I could barely navigate around a command prompt. Now, I explained that to my employer and understanding that, hey, look, I understand that I might be missing some of these technical pieces that you're looking for within the best candidate. But how I was able to transfer a lot of my skills from law enforcement was, hey, I'm still very standardized and systematic. I can still walk through a process from point A to point B, and I can still give you a full 5W of who, what, when, why, where, why an event or something is happening. And the other thing about being resourceful and considering kind of building out your own home labs and doing capture the flags and other additional training on your free time, you can still take all that experience and then translate that into a resume or conversation. So obviously being in law enforcement, I had to spend most of my days doing my actual job, and then the evenings go through Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, opening up my own VMs, and learning those skills on my own. And then having those conversations to my employment and management allowed me to still show the skills I learned to get through that break in that first initial break into breaking into this organization of cybersecurity that we're all into today or trying to get into. So here's no ploy on college, but one of my favorite memes that I've used on another challenge I'll explain here later in the way was get a degree, they said. So as I mentioned, education I think is very important. I myself hold a master's degree and I can thank the US military for that by using my GI Bill, but college is not for everyone. I use a really good story from one of my colleagues that helped mentor me and get me into cybersecurity, where he was a high school dropout, got his GED, self-taught though within Golang and Rust and Python, and he easily picked up a job working for a government contractor, clearing 6 figures, still works for that same company today, also with a few new certifications and with a TS clearance. So now why do I say that? Because Andy, we're here at a college. The college is sponsoring the talk. I understand that, and like I said, I would push people to, if they can, go to college, but understand, as we mentioned before in our maps, there's additional ways to pivot through cybersecurity and leverage if you're either transitioning from a current role that's not in cyber to get into cybersecurity. And I also mentioned here, as well as like the certifications can fast track or maybe pad a resume. Certifications are excellent, but the caveat is when you're using certifications to pad a resume to become an alphabet soup after your name, and you're not retaining the information, you're not doing a service to yourself. I've had talks with folks on my channel and across the environment where They have every SAN certification that I may or may not even heard of on top of Google and Azure certifications. But when I ask them maybe a certain specific question on a networking topic, they don't know. They have to look it up, which is fine. There's no harm in that. But just understand that if you're going to be going through either education for a good, strong knowledge base on the basic foundations of college, retain the information the best you can that you're going to be able to explain that to on a resume or pivoting to that next role. Same for the certifications. Don't just get a certification and then dump all the information. I've taken certifications that have not passed, but I still learned and took all the information from those trainings, SAN specifically, because they're very expensive certifications, and some of the training can be difficult to maintain and actually learn. But I took that back to my organization, and I still helped set up new SOPs and procedures that still trained and kind of did a train the trainer to educate my younger analysts that haven't been to those trainings. So quick optimization on LinkedIn searching for those that are looking for jobs. So now this is probably about, I'd say maybe a month or two old, maybe even 3 now. But there was a method in here where if you go into the LinkedIn job search, you could actually pivot the URL where rather than filtering for 24 hours, by changing that to 3600, it allowed you to filter jobs that were only posted in the last hour. Now, once again, for a little audience participation, who here can maybe explain why it would be important to see jobs that have been posted in the last hour compared to the last 24 hours? Very true, very possible. So what he said is that for those that are obviously watching the video and maybe didn't hear on the B-Sides chat, is that someone could still be waiting to see applications come in through that post. Anyone else?
First applications get priority. If you're on the top of the list, then you're more likely to be seen.
Okay, so he said that first applications can take priority. So I'll put some truth, yay and nay behind that. So yes, I think I would agree that I'll get right to you. I would agree that by being one of the first applicants, if it's being actually looked at through a real person rather than an automated process through AI, where you're meeting all the requirements to the role, it could be higher possibilities that you would be the first one to be looked at. I agree. So you, sir? So he mentioned that once again, like being able to be the first one to apply, you could be the first one to be looked at, or once again, many companies, like he mentioned, once they hit a certain threshold of applicants, they will take down the job because it's honestly just too many applications to go over. I know when I was back at Wells Fargo, my manager dropped in a position for an entry-level security analyst. Within 2 hours, they had over 1,000 applications, and they ended up having to take down the rec before even the first day. So just a fun little tip trick, and I think I'll be posting these slides at the end of the talk as well, so don't feel that if you can't see that or if it's hard to read, I'll make sure that these are somehow visible. So continuing on with get a degree, they said, so what's the return on investment? So that's one thing that, as I mentioned before, when it comes to whether going down the education route through schooling, whether it's going through your own YouTube learning and certification, maybe paths, what's going to be the benefit out of these and what's your end goal? So targeting certs that boost credibility faster could be important. So if you're trying to get an entry role into cyber certifications and you want to be a security analyst, you'd want to target blue team certifications. If you're wanting to maybe try to get that mix of experience and certifications, that's where building home labs, participating in Capture the Flag, just like how B-Sides Cache is doing theirs today, and just mentioning that, hey, I go to my local meetups and I compete in these CTFs on my own or with a team to kind of help and grow kind of some credibility. Even though you're not in an actual environment or a network, you can still mention that, hey, look, I've used malware reverse engineering lookups. I've done large language model CTF events where I've had to break language models to provide me information it wasn't allowed to. Or there's been PCAP. I know there's a PCAP challenge on this one today where, hey, I've navigated through Wireshark and I know how to look for specific events that could be malicious depending on the traffic we're seeing. So then as we tie into like, what certification do I get, Andy? And that's going to be a piece where, as I mentioned before, certifications are excellent. And some of these are, I think, slightly outdated. And once again, these are all images to simply grab from Google. And some of our beginner certifications, so for example, Security Plus, the CSA, ECDFP, Blue Team Level 1, I've talked to many folks, one on my channel and across even hirings, that we're at such a different level of what organizations are trying to expect out of junior analysts that I'd say Security Plus has moved up to what they're looking for is a CYSA, or the Cybersecurity Analyst certification, because it's such a concern that if we hire these new analysts that don't have the actual experience and an event occurs, who's to blame? Is it the onboarding? Is it that we hired a brand new analyst out of school that has or holds no work experience? But then here comes the chicken and the egg of, well, how do I get experience, Andy, if I don't get a job to get the experience? And that's going to be, I see some head shakings, and that's going to be the hardest part to take in mind. And I had a great conversation with one of the folks here that were in the room earlier for check-in. Consider this on a resume when talking through the resumes. CYSA requires in CompTIA's verbiage that you should not be taking this certification unless you hold or recommends 3 to 5 years of cybersecurity experience. So what does that mean, Andy? Well, if you hold the CYSA, could you leverage that, hey, I know this is a 3 to 5 year certification level where it's saying you need that much time or experience to hold this, but I already hold that. There's also been conversations I've had where you can also leverage, well, hey, look, I'm a brand new analyst that has no bad habits. So if there's certain policies or procedures that companies have, I use that line many a times on my first few interviews saying, hey, look, I have no bad habits. I am a cop breaking into cybersecurity. You get to train me from the ground up. Now that can be a positive and a negative. I got some good head shakes and I got some bad head shakes. Well, we don't want to train someone from the ground up. We want someone that already has a good foundation or a foothold into this kind of tool sets or type of investigations that we're actually trying to look upon, which I totally understand. I also had some great follow-ups where I made it to a 3rd round interview where I'm like, cool. And they're like, you know what? We really appreciated your drive, and that statement really stood out to us because we can train you and make you the analyst we want you to be. And then I got beat out by an internal hire, which happens. So how are we preparing for the interview and what are we prepping for? A good friend of mine, Eli Woodward, who used to work for Early Warnings, mentioned that titles don't matter. However, you still want to try to find and look at the next title you want to become to. So if I want to become a cyber threat intelligence analyst, I would want to go look at LinkedIn profiles or other folks within this organization or maybe within the network I work in. Okay, well, what are they doing? What are they training about? What are they learning about? Honestly, just reaching out to someone on LinkedIn or your network saying, hey, my name is Andrew Crotty. I would love to talk to you for 5 to 10 minutes I'm working on trying to become a cyber threat intelligence analyst. I wanted to see if I could take a few minutes of your time just to maybe pick your brain on things I could be doing to better myself. Now, what's stopping you from going to Google or ChatGPT or going on CrowdStrike or other kind of organizations that could be telling you and showing you what other maybe threat teams are already pulling up and doing? There's nothing. But doing that extra little step and talking within your network even and leveraging that to kind of try to level up your next position is nothing a bad thing you can't do. Titles are goals. And as you look for that next title and those goals, align your goals and your training with what's going to make you the most successful and the best candidate to move up to that position. Cybersecurity is huge. As I mentioned before, and we're going to keep talking about for the next few slides, that it's not just cybersecurity, it's not just pen testing, it's not just being an analyst on a blue team, and it's not just IT help desk. There's many different positions that you can get into and prep for these organizations. Now, another quick show of hands, and who here has been through the technical interviews for Amazon, maybe through 3-letter agencies, where they have you open up a command prompt and then they have you run a bunch of commands and they want to see you code or create a new file or create a process through Active Directory. Anyone in the room? See a few hands? See a few hands? You'll understand this then. So that interview be like a battle for the worst thing in the world of they're going to put you through the ringer, have you open up command prompts, go through the whole thing. And then you actually get into the job. You're like, hey, here's the Confluence page. We have all these procedures already written out. Nothing really deviates, but we just needed to make sure you knew what you were talking about. And why do I say that? Because it goes back to my initial piece of learning and breaking into cybersecurity doesn't mean you have to be a Python SME or a scripting SME or know exactly how to work your way around a command box. However, or the command line. However, having those basic and fundamental skills to at least be able to look up the right information or to do a Google search or to maybe even go through some SOPs or procedures if you're in an organization can go a long way to show that the employer that you're willing to learn the information and do that extra step to make sure that you know what you're talking about. So the technical jobs don't start technical. So myself included, even when I got my first role outside of law enforcement into cyber, was with the state of Arizona Department of Homeland Security. Very fancy title, very long name, and I got to work at the state level. We had organizations, teams, cities, counties that fell under us. And I remember telling my boss when I initially got the job, I'm like, hey, we can take out the senior security analyst title, man. We can just call it information security analyst. He's like, no, don't worry, Andy. The title is just for HR. We're going to train you up and teach you everything you need to know and make sure you're successful, which made me feel slightly comfortable, right? But the thing that's wild is the importance of titles and breaking into this field is there were so many different people at the state that when we had certain RFIs or requests for information come up to the state level and come up to us for a solution or a question, it put a lot of focus on me. But I realized that they weren't technical questions. They were really just kind of procedural, or a little bit of research I had to find that we already had SOPs for, or maybe that organization already had SOPs for, or previous engagements for other teams or counties. And I really just learned it was a lot of just me having to do some research and reading. So if someone ever told you that breaking into cyber is going to be just some easy button smashing with maybe running and working a few detections a day, unfortunately, that's not the case. You're going to be writing reports all day. You'll be going through some maybe deep dives into SOPs or some standard operating procedures, and doing some other dive-ins to other policies in your organization or other organizations if you're an MSP or an MSSP. Another important part of getting into or breaking into this field, whether it's from law enforcement or whatever career you're looking into, is getting into your network and community engagement. So obviously you guys are all here at B-Sides Cache here in Utah. And you didn't, well, maybe some of you got paid to be here by your employers, but I would assume that most of us are here because we want to come learn or talk and find other like-minded individuals that are in cybersecurity. What's happening? What are these talks about? What is, maybe there's a company here that you knew from seeing the B-Sides Discord chat or folks coming on LinkedIn that's at a company you want to go to. And you want to make sure you're over there to talk to that person presenting, or maybe try to link up with me at the event and just kind of ask some questions and say hi. Now, there's a way you can also social engineer your networking community skills. And I say this because even myself, I'm an extroverted IT guy, if you guys haven't picked up on that yet. And I like to talk. I do briefs in the military. I talk to folks all the time. I've been given the nickname of Tigger when I worked at the state because I had such a good personality, but I always talk too fast. And I'd also be told by some of my employers, like, Andy, the best thing we like about you is you make us say 3 more things a day. But the worst thing we hate about you is you make us say 3 more things that we don't want to today. Because they want to be left alone. A lot of folks that work in IT, they can be recluse, they can be to their own, very introverted. They don't want to talk or maybe work with a team. But being a little bit able to step out of your comfort zone and make friends or talk at these conferences and even set up small skills like, you know what, I'm going to go to my next B-Sides and I'm going to shake 3 people's hands and just introduce myself, but that's it. I'm not going to add their LinkedIns. I'm not going to ask for phone numbers. That's it. You've already stepped a little bit out of your shell to kind of go to the next step. Well, the next challenge you might set for yourself is, okay, well, the next thing I plan to do at my next tech meetup, I'm going to meet 3 people, but I'm going to exchange LinkedIn informations. I'm going to start growing my network. Then we're done. We're good for another month. But now let's set that next really strong challenge. So on your 3rd meetup, maybe find someone that's talking or presenting, shake their hand, introduce yourself, see if they can meet up on a digital coffee for 15, 20 minutes and have a short conversation about cybersecurity or things that you could be doing to better yourself, to make yourself a strong candidate, or things that they would even recommend that maybe you want to give them a resume, see if they review your resume, and go from there. As I mentioned, not everyone wants to go out and be on a podcast or a YouTube or go shake everyone's hand at a convention, but it can get you some places. Such as for myself, I went to DEF CON this year for free. Now, Andy, how did I do that? I didn't social engineer a company. I didn't send out a phishing email. I didn't steal some creds and get myself a black badge. What I simply did is, with my network and what I started doing with my YouTube channel in Arizona, is I started talking to people about breaking into cyber. And with that journey, I got to meet Josh Mason over at Synac, who, luckily enough for me this year, submitted Noob Community. We're going to be a village next year. And I was asked to come actually work and help inside the village that year, which got me a free badge to DEF CON. Now, what that looked like was some meetings a few months before, setting up volunteer pages, setting up sponsorships. So we did a very noob-friendly capture the flag. We had to find prizes and giveaways and how we were going to do it. So slightly some nonprofit work to kind of do that extra over and beyond to earn my ticket. I didn't just go there and go, all right, Josh, I'm going to head out to all the rooms and go to all these talks. I was inside New Village probably 90% of the time. Now, this was my 3rd DEF CON, so I've been around DEF CON. I know what it's about. So if you haven't been to DEF CON, it's a conference that's held in Las Vegas. It's right after Black Hat. But what we did at New Village is we helped kind of bridge the gap on breaking into cyber your first time at DEF CON, what you should expect, villages and rooms that were noob friendly, and also kind of just being able to let people network and talk about local K through 12s and other things that they can do in their areas or local B-Sides to come and even meet up. Other show of hands, who here is currently in school or trying to get a job in cybersecurity? Awesome, I see some hands. So quick question, I'm assuming most of you guys are already inside building home labs or doing CTFs. Have you ever thought about reaching out to your local K-12 schools in the community? Or maybe even talking to, I don't know if you guys are going to churches or going to any other nonprofits, but offering those services and maybe linking up with any of those saying, hey, look, I'm a senior at X college, I'm graduating next year, but I specialize in doing web application testing. I noticed that your nonprofit has a website. I'd love to offer you a free pen test, or maybe if you currently already have a team doing that, would love to help give any assistance that you can. You're going to get one of two responses. One, thank you, but no thank you. We already have someone that does that. Or two, hey, you know what? We do have an organization or someone here in-house that does that, but we'd love the free help. What does that do, Andy? Well, what that's doing is now giving you some, one, networking abilities, because you're now talking and working with local K-12s or churches or nonprofits. And two, those are some things you can put on your resume for things that you've actually done outside of school or outside your own home lab. So as I mentioned before, networking is amazing and it allows you to meet amazing people. Now, you may not know anyone on this page, maybe other than the very top left, top right of John Hammond. For those that know John Hammond, that was my yearly photo with him. And but there's some folks in here that you may know. And by me simply networking and creating my YouTube channel and putting myself out there and talking to folks on LinkedIn and Discord communities, it allowed me to really build a strong foundation of self-branding. And I say self-branding because for those that are currently in the work role, what happens if we lost our jobs tomorrow? Do we have a strong enough resume or a strong enough LinkedIn profile or a strong enough kind of work ethic to where if I were to throw out a Hail Mary onto my LinkedIn community, would I just get crickets? I've slightly learned this last year, one, giving back to my community and allowing myself to mentor and let people share their journey of how they broke into cyber has opened up a lot of doors to me across mentorship from everyone from 12th grade up until even my seniors and folks just leaving college. Because mentorship is sometimes hard to find. We don't have folks that know who to find. We don't have outlets. We don't know the community. We're not part of Discord groups. And so, but by simply just being a little bit more flexible and willing to maybe talk to folks or go to your local meetups and break out of that comfort zone, it might open up some crazy doors. Like, I don't know, going to DEF CON for free and getting to network and talk to a bunch of amazing, cool hackers and blue teamers and compliance folks that are working in this industry, that are hiring managers, directors, senior engineers, and analysts that you can talk with, bounce back ideas, and even maybe just work at their company next. Now, these next few slides, for those that are in cybersecurity or maybe are working in cybersecurity, there's going to be some outlets I think you should go to or that I would recommend being a part of. This is just a short list of some of my top favorite Discord groups that I'm a part of. Obviously, Ginger Hacker and New Village are on there. They were just added. Anti-Syphon training from Black Hills. You have Hack Smarter from Tyler Ramsby. He used to be with Rhino Security. He just broke away and now is having his own pen testing company. You have Simply Cyber with Jared. Oh, don't let me mess up your name, Jared. Jared Azure. It's like Azure, but Azure. I hope I said that right. Don't kill me. Try Hack Me. Hack the Box should be on there, but I don't know why I took it off. Ginger Hacker is my own Discord. I post job recommendations and other resource pages as well, just like this. And then New Village, which is the new Discord that we just made because we made New Village for DEF CON this last year, and will be at DEF CON for the foreseeable future from what we've been told. Then your foundation and hands-on skills. So obviously a lot of these are going to be very common knowledge. You maybe already are in these environments and already doing a lot of this training, but these are all still great ones to kind of throw in and put into the void of things that you should be doing if you're not. So obviously Try Hack Me. Try Hack Me just got done doing their Hack to Win challenge here, I think from September 1st to September 9th. But this is a great way, and there's a lot of friendly beginner to intermediate rooms and challenges that you can do in here for free. There is a paywall to some aspects of some of the rooms, so this is not just a completely free resource, but if you are not in Try Hack Me, I even, when I was leaving law enforcement, leveraged Try Hack Me and put my little top 2% in Try Hack Me on my resume on other skills I was doing trying to get into the industry, because this was my experience, my home lab, messing around in Try Hack Me, and learning all the skills I could to make myself the best candidate. We are now graduating from Try Hack Me to Hack the Box. I think Hack the Box, too loud. I think Hack the Box is a little bit more intermediate red team focused oriented. But however, I've actually been navigating through there a lot more this last week and a half or 2 weeks after coming back from DEF CON. And there's actually amazing rooms in there called Sherlock rooms. And for those that have not been in Hack the Box for blue team training, Sherlock rooms are blue team oriented training that Hack the Box does. Now, they also have some great OSCP prep, which is, if you're looking into getting into pen testing, I would say is the pinnacle of right now of where you want to get for certifications. But they have amazing, it's very much CTF style rooms and trainings. There's obviously a lot of walkthroughs and other trainings that you can do with those as well, which I always explain to people that if you get into a room and you're not aware of it, don't be afraid to open up the walkthrough and go through the walkthrough just step by step. You can always come back and revert the room and refresh it, and then just close the walkthrough. And then once you've gotten more comfortable with the commands, go through it again to build that repetition so you really understand how and what the box and what the training is trying to teach you to do. Blue Team Blue Team Labs Online. So this company is based out of the UK. So one thing I think with a lot of certifications that folks are starting to realize is, as much as CompTIA is well known, the aspects of only having 4 simulations, I'll say, where it still chooses the best bubble, and that might be, or a drop-down box. Not bashing on CompTIA, but with Blue Team Level 1 and some other ones, even like such as SANS or TryHackMe with their Blue Team Level 1 certification, they're allowing more simulations where you're actually inside a lab environment and actually having to write up a report, go through logs, and how that's more beneficial, I think, when it comes to certifications and training. You can then explain to a resume or during an interview saying, hey, I understand I only have experience via through my home lab and schooling, but I've also done these certifications that actually had live environments where I was inside a sim, inside a SOAR, reviewing Splunk logs to better myself and understand what and how these events were happening. Another one right here is Just Hacking training. So this one just came on the market this year with John Hammond. John Hammond here has tons of free practical labs, pen testing, recon, OSINT, malware analysis, and he is collabing this with many different cybersecurity professionals across the industry. Michelle Kahn, Bailey Marshall, Tyler Ramsby, all creating training and products, putting into Just Hacking. Now, there are some stuff in here that is free, but as always, we gotta make sure we can pay the web app and developers. There are some trainings in here that you do need to pay for as well to actually get the full content or training paths into just training or just hacking. We also have Pluralsight. Pluralsight, I leveraged to get all my CompTIA certifications when I was at the bank at Wells Fargo because we had access to Pluralsight. I also see someone in the crowd that used to be at Pluralsight. But they do amazing kind of video training learnings, very much like Udemy, which they're also going to be here on our slide deck here, also going over before. The difference with Pluralsight is there is no free leverage of this. You have to pay for the subscription to get access to all the training and the labs that I think Pluralsight has. Black Hills Anti-Syphon training. If you've never heard of Anti-Syphon training before, please take out your phones, take a photo of this slide right now. The most amazing part about this is that this is the part I like most about Anti-Syphon training is the way that they do some of their training certifications. They do what a pay what you can model. So they will have 5-day-long live lab instructor labs with real people, not some automated recorded video you're watching with an instructor. And they will actually walk you through labs and training from point A to point B of setting up VMs, going through logs, going through Wireshark, how to respond to conduct malware analysis. And the way the training works is they'll do a pay what you can model. So they have everything from $0 to like maybe $500. Not saying you have to drop $500. That's more or less for folks that can support those that maybe aren't able to pay for the training certification and kind of trying to pay it forward. But I've gone through several of their trainings and it's fantastic. It's great information. You get GitHub repositories, access to their Discord, and actual live instructor questions as well if you get stuck on something. And the training is actually very beneficial and you get a lot out of it. Udemy is another great one. So Udemy is very similar, I'd say, to Pluralsight. There's walkthroughs. This is where also other folks can actually build out training that they're maybe proficient in to learn and then share their skills across the environment. I've used this for Azure, my Azure 900, some Microsoft certifications, Google certifications. I'm using Udemy right now for my CSSP studies as well as some other sites. And so much more. And there's hand-on labs in there and also guided paths and just another great resource that you can leverage and use. So in conclusion, the point about breaking into cyber and whether you're transitioning from law enforcement as a preacher, as a teacher, as a librarian, is to always kind of be curious and ask why. You're always going to be learning inside this field because every 6 months we have something new coming down the pipeline of new vulnerabilities, new tools, AI is being integrated into everything, and definitely networking across your community. So I've mentioned before that me getting the network this year took me to DEF CON for free. I think it was a great gift and a blessing, and I got to leverage and talk to so many different cybersecurity professionals to also just grow my network and also just talk to folks trying to break into cyber or even transition into cybersecurity to kind of let them share their story with me or their journey to kind of get into this next role. And I am definitely ahead of time, so I will open up the floor to any questions as a short AMA. Ask me anything. So what's an AMA, Andy? AMA is a no holds bar. You can ask me what my favorite color is, and as long as it's ethical, I will give you an answer. Does anyone have any questions in the crowd? Oh, good, perfect hands. Go ahead. So the question was, what was the hardest thing I found transitioning from my law enforcement role to cyber? The time commitment, honestly. I realized that when I decided, it took me a year to do my transition into cyber. I know some folks think like, oh, I can go to this boot camp or I can go through a workshop and it says in 6 months I'll have my next job in cybersecurity making 6 figures. There's a 1% chance. It happens. But I realized that there was such a knowledge gap that I was walking away from because I was with law enforcement for 7 years before I moved into the position. So I'm like, okay, well, I need a knowledge foundation base. So I went back to school for my master's in cybersecurity. And as for my law enforcement folks, there's a joke saying that the gateway drug into drugs use is marijuanas. And so I always joke that the gateway cert into cybersecurity is Security Plus. So I went ahead and got my Security Plus. And that opened up all the acronyms and the trainings and learnings. And just like law enforcement or military, there are acronyms for days. So learning what all the acronyms meant, why were they important, what processes and how a website or a system needs to be secured is important was kind of a difficult piece for me. I hated school growing up, but I realized when I got older in my years, I'm like, I need to go back to school and really understand this stuff so I can go into this next field and like be the best candidate. Also just doing research in the free time on my own. My days were long days. I start my day at 6, I'd end my day at 11 p.m. and then repeat Monday through Friday. So a lot of self-taught, a lot of learning, YouTube learning, try hack me to make sure I really solidified and stuck in my foundations and then just applying out. So hopefully that answers the question. So another hand up. What's your favorite unethical color? My favorite unethical color? Oh man, I've never been asked that question. That's actually a weird question. Pink? I guess. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I won't lie. The question was, what was my favorite unethical color? So I don't know. You stumped me there. Good job. So the question was, what skill set did I find being in law enforcement made me stand out different from people in the industry? And I'd say that what I brought to the table when I got my job with the state of Arizona was, and I actually got this comment from my state CISO, was, Andy, like, we love you being here because cops make the best analysts. I'm like, well, that's really impressive to say, but you got to give me an explanation of why. And he's like, well, like, you're standardized and systematic. You have to explain things to a judge and a jury of 12 that hold everything from a GED to a master's degree, depending on who couldn't get out of jury duty that day. And you have to walk through an entire case to prove how and why something happened and why it was bad or malicious. Or switch that around and maybe you're trying to expunge something and show someone why it wasn't malicious. So taking my report writing skills and my kind of analytical mindset of collecting evidence, such as a gun at a crime scene, would then kind of correlate to now going through logs and finding maybe a malicious traffic that a user went to on their web browser. And taking those skills and kind of getting to mash them together where I'm like, man, when I finally was able to solve my first kind of incident with my team where we were able to remove some malware inside of a library somewhere in Arizona, I won't tell you where, I realized, because imposter syndrome is such a real thing in this industry, and there were some days where I didn't realize if I was making the right jump. I was obviously in law enforcement for 7 years doing that career change. Some people don't do career changes till 10, 12 years, or they'll do it earlier. But I was like, should I just be staying a cop? Do I really belong here? But I realized once I got that comment from my CISO, I'm like, okay, I belong here. I understand what I'm doing. And I just need to kind of continue to grow, ask questions, be willing to train, and take feedback in a positive way. Not every day is a good day. You're going to miss things. You might take down the DMV's DocuSign because you blocked it on accident during a phishing email, but it's okay. You're going to learn from those, and you're going to bounce back, and you're going to be a better analyst from it, or whatever role you kind of get into. I saw 2 other hands. Anyone else?
Based on your experience, would you say there's any significant benefit towards trying to go into public versus private sectors for cybersecurity?
So the question is with my, if I'm saying this correctly, my experience of going from public to private sector, is it a pro or con to start with public or private sector first to public?
In the industry, with inherent differences between public sectors and private sectors and how they operate, is there one that you would suggest?
I'll answer what I think you're trying to ask, and hopefully this will answer it for you. So if I had to go back in time and talk to Andy of how he should break into cybersecurity, I would honestly probably tell him to do the same thing I did, and I'd look for my state and local government or my cities. Now, the reason why I say that is because with private and government sectors, one, positions are probably going to be available. But the reason why is because they don't really pay the big bucks. So when I took my first job leaving law enforcement into the state, I took a pay cut. But I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I knew by me getting into this position, I can level up and get myself into a better position from cybersecurity. And fighting people on the south side of Phoenix is kind of tiring and hurts your back. So it was just a little bit easier not to have to fight people and just fight the keyboard. And I was only at the state of Arizona for 9 months. So I was there for 6 months as a senior information security analyst. After 6 months of working my butt off, learning the systems, understanding procedures, being a really go-getter initiator, they promoted me to a senior engineer. And I tell this story, and my boss knows I tell this story because he's an amazing boss, Adam Pena. He's our director at MCC in Arizona. On our Christmas party, I got headhunted to Wells Fargo to go join their cybersecurity team, which came with a slight title increase and a very much larger pay increase. And I remember I told Adam, hey man, I need to talk to you real quick. Can I pull you aside? He's like, yeah man, give me 1 second. And he walks away and comes back, hands me an envelope. He's like, yeah, open the letter real quick. Gave me a Christmas card saying, hey, so glad you're on the team. So excited to see the next year what happens. I'm like, oh man, you should hold on to this card real quick. And I pretty much explained to him like, hey, I'm actually contemplating a new job with Wells Fargo. And I tell the story, and maybe this will make sense to you, but I tell the story because then Adam then explained to me, he's like, you need to take the job. And I'm like, well, I feel bad, Adam, because I'm leaving this team. I haven't even been here a year. And you'll know you're in a good place with great management because any good manager, rather than holding you back, is going to promote you and push you forward. He's like, Andy, all this shows me is that our SOC is making such great cybersecurity engineers and analysts that I'm making you so competitive that someone else wants to take you away from my team. And I really appreciated that because I mean, I'm married. I have a wife and 2 kids. I got to make sure I'm providing for my family. And he kind of told me, he's like, yeah, man, you need to take the position. And I left in great standings with the state. I still talk to all my coworkers and everything there as well. But with current day and age of trying to break into the public sector, so like your banks, Wells Fargo, Microsoft, Google, it is such a competitive world because one, the salaries are insanely high. The requirements are listed to find unicorns. And if you find one, let me know, capture it. We need to study it, duplicate it, and share it to the world. But going private sector into your local state and governments is going to, one, get you a lot more experience, I think, with getting into all the systems and the knowledge and even communication skills. And then from there, that's where you can grow and then go out to the private sector and make the big bucks like everyone kind of wants to do when they're breaking into cybersecurity. All right, that drill got a little bit more time, but any other questions? I see you in the back. Go ahead.
What made you sure you wanted to get into cybersecurity?
That's a good question. So the question is what really made sure that I wanted to get into cybersecurity? And if everyone remembers the years where we had the huge incident with George Floyd, and was a horrible thing that happened, but law enforcement had such a negative target on their back. Anyone with a badge or anyone that was with law enforcement, you could have been the best cop of the world, cop of the year. You could have saved 10,000 babies from a burning hospital, and you were still just looked at as being worthless. And it put a lot of targets on people's backs in law enforcement. And obviously being married with 2 kids, and my wife's family has folks in law enforcement, which I applaud the job, and I still tell anyone trying to get into law enforcement that I would never change the career path I went through. I would still become a cop before getting into cyber. But it was a lot of stress for me and the family. And it was getting taxating. I also worked very crazy hours. I was on call 28 days of the month. I was a drug recognition expert and a phlebotomist with the city, so I was constantly getting called out, going on scenes, and it was kind of just getting to become a lot, and it was just tiring. And I've been in the military for 17 years, and I'm part of a cyber protection team. And talking to a lot of my mentors within my unit, they said, Andy, why don't you break into cybersecurity, man? You're a great analyst. You're a great threat intel analyst. You could be making just as much, if not the same, doing some great work, just writing reports. But it's a lot more safe for you. It's more safe for your family. And when I went on deployment to Kuwait, working with the 29th ID Infantry Division, doing threat intel with their S2, their information shop. And that's where I got my Sec Plus. I was working on my master's degree. And when I started interviewing for all the applications, I did what anyone kind of did initially when they started. I started tracking all my failures. I was getting 100. I did 100 applications and got 101 rejection letters because someone sent it twice. And yeah, you've been there. And initially I was just like, okay, well, maybe this isn't the place for me. But by networking and my mentors, they introduced me to my team at the time at the state. They got me my initial interview to the state of Arizona. And after kind of explaining the same question of like, hey, why do you want to leave law enforcement and break into cyber? I explained my passion. I explained what I was doing on my own private time, of building my own VMs, going through training on my own dime, paid for my own CompTIA. I was paying for my own certifications. That showed that drive and initial push of what I really wanted to do. And like, I'm a gamer, I'm a nerd. I already like doing cyber stuff anyway, so like it kind of just fit the bill. But hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, I think it was the right career change and move to do. So hand in the back. What was something that I thought would be difficult that then once I got into the field was not as difficult as I thought? Honestly, working cases. Like when I got my first job as a SOC analyst, I'm like, man, this is gonna be so complex. I'm gonna be so confused. And once I got into the tools and I learned the tools, so I'll just give some examples of tools, not saying they're for any specific organization, but like for an EDR going through CrowdStrike and navigating through CrowdStrike to pull logs, or to remoting onto a host to pull a file to drop it into a sandbox to deploy it to see what happens when I run it, and then just writing a synopsis of what I saw, or going through policies and procedures for GRC for SOC 2 compliance of like, hey, do we have this log ingestion implemented? If so, how and why, or why is it and how is this happening? I realized it was just doing more research and kind of making sure I knew how and what I was doing. I thought there'd be almost like learning a new language, like going to Germany or Mexico the first time and not understanding the language, and you're just walking around like, oh, this is so cool. But then you go try to order like a soda and they give you a water. I'm like, okay, cool, this will work, I guess. So I think it's changed a little bit now because, as many talks have said, like AI is becoming such a big thing. It's being integrated into a lot of workspaces. It's, I think, helping out with a lot of analysts getting into the role. But I argue the fact that I don't think AI is at the point yet where it's going to take over some entry-level positions, such as a SOC. Because I can even talk at the federal level, like we're not fully implementing AI to write reports. Like that still takes an analyst, hands on keyboard, eyes on screen, to proofread, review, pull logs, and kind of get those into an investigation. So great question. So with that, that's a little bit, or any more questions, I guess, before I know I got like 5 more minutes. Any more questions?
What would you tell somebody who's considering cyber, but they're on the fence about it?
You need to just do it. And that's such a play from Shia LaBeouf, but if you're not sure, the one thing that I think the biggest issue that folks have when it comes into breaking into cyber is they don't know what they want to do. And they think there's only the 3 roles: pen tester, red team hacker, blue teamer, or IT help desk. There's so many different roles and things you can do to get into cybersecurity. You really need to find what your passion is. So whether that's app development, whether that's procurement, whether that's sales, whether that's project management, whether that's cyber marketing, there's so many different things that you'd be surprised on. Maybe your passion is building websites. Well, MSSPs and startups and nonprofits need to build websites, but keep in mind, we also need to make sure those websites are safe. Are you building the website safely? Are you using like bad code, bad practices where someone can go in there and deface it? So there's a lot of different ways I think folks can break into cyber, and their journey is all different. I've talked to folks, like I said, that are teachers, preachers, cops, librarians, that get into cybersecurity and they love it. And burnout's a real thing, and you'll talk to folks that get extremely tired and they've been in cyber for 5-10 years, but they look like they've been in it for 25. And there's long days out of it, but I think it's very beneficial. And it's just finding what you enjoy and what you're passionate about. Great question. All right, everybody. Well, these are all my socials. If you go to the YouTube, there's a link tree pretty much that has everything. The YouTube was made off of Dare, so just bear with me on the name. But it's Ginger Hacker. It's this logo right here. I do an awesome series called Breaking into Cyber where I talk to everyone across the industry, from interns to juniors and seniors in college, of why they decided to go into cybersecurity, to IT help desk, to engineers, SLED, GMs, state CISOs, you name it. I want to talk to them because everyone has a different journey of how they got here. And I'm excited to see how you all, if you're trying to break into cyber, start your journey or get in. And if you're currently on your journey, hopefully it's been a smooth one. And if you're transitioning to something else, I hope it's just as smooth. And thank you guys so much for your time. And I will see you guys. I'll see if anyone has any questions. I'll be outside the room to take any. Thanks so much.